Hello everyone, welcome to Ayumu's BS Seminar. I'm your seminar leader Ayumu Seiki, and today I'm going to talk about the top 10 cards from Battlefield Saga Set 3 Aquatic Invaders, which I think will be the most impactful for the new meta. Obviously, these are just my own opinions and is also only based upon mostly speculations, especially since this video is done before I've had any detailed playtest. So without further ado, let's get into the first card. The first one on the list is a Red Spirit and is Chameleon Whip. It has a pretty interesting effect, being able to block opposing spirits from damaging the player as long as they have fewer BP than itself. The downside is that it has to be exhausted to trigger the effect, and since it can't block as well, the only way to do so is to make it attack. So at best, it works as an early game control, as later on when the opponent summons something that's 5000 BP or more, Chameleon Whip wouldn't be able to attack anymore, causing it to be completely useless, even more so than Dragon Arc. Obviously, unless your opponent used Rune Prison, but I don't know why they would want to do that. However, on the other hand, since the effect references its own BP, there are many ways to manipulate that, with the most obvious choice being BP buff from White Nessuses. There's Normangar City for the constant BP buff in the opposing turn, and there's always Far-Flung Land as an option for plus 3000 BP boost, or the Giant Beast Forest to steadily add more BP when the opponent draws. Alternatively, maybe the flash BP boost of your magic cards will finally become useful. And of course, if you're pairing Chameleon Whip with yellow cards, there's always the option of reducing the opposing spirit's BP instead. Of course, even with that much said, at the end, the spirit is still very vulnerable to removals, especially against purple as it has to be constantly exhausted for the best use. The spirit probably would be pointless against pterosaurs as well, as the spirits will constantly have BP buffs when attacking. So in the end, maybe it's not as useful as I make it sound like, but I think the fact that it's a BP based control allows a lot of manipulation and strategy. When the Blaze Lion co-main was first revealed, people seemed to think it was very underwhelming for an X-Rare. It seemed to be too high a cost for a tempo deck such as that of Giganorex, and its effects also seemed lackluster. However, I do think it can help the deck with what it's been doing. Without the aid of extra effects, most of the spirits in the Rex deck can't reach 8000 BP, but co-main can. Not to mention, co-main still gains at least 2000 BP when attacking even if it's the only spirit on the field. But of course, you rarely come down to the case where it's the only spirit on the field, so you're going to gain at least 6000 BP on attack, and with some additional BP from your Nessuses. Even at level 1, it can easily reach over 15,000 BP, bypassing even the spirits with the highest BP currently in the game. Even without Confront, as long as it can attack every turn, that can easily create a lot of pressure for the opponent. However, what I'm most interested in is actually its level 2 effect. At least from my own playing experiences, as well as my observation on other games on streams, the pterosaur players often run low with cards in their hand, especially after mid-game, with one reason being that the opponent has set up a decent enough defense that the pterosaur player can't reduce their life anymore, and become unable to draw with Scorched Battlefield. Charge Draw and Star Blast Draw may also prove to be unreliable at times, as they're always one-time use, and obviously Volcanic Canyon only filters your hand. It doesn't actually increase the number of cards. The constant replenishment of cards allows the player to keep the number of spirits on their own field constant. Paired with the high BP, co-main allows the player to constantly pressure the opponent while still trying to dig out Giganorex. Since Volcanic Canyon allows you to discard a card every turn, the player wouldn't run into the risk of being stuck with that cards in hand, and hence unable to draw with co-main. If manipulated well, the pterosaur player will literally be drawing 3 cards every turn, with potentially 3 more spirits on the field every turn. Not to mention, while you're constantly drawing, you're also keeping your hand size low, which works pretty well against Mammoth Aegis to deny the one draw. Being a level 2 effect also means you can freely turn off the effect to make sure you don't deck yourself out first. Of course, co-main isn't just limited to the Rex deck, it may also be a good draw engine for half-red aggressive decks, especially when pairing with the green color, giving enough cost to summon co-main in the first place, and acting as a draw source which green has been lacking. It can even be used in a red-blue deck, considering the blue color also focuses on filtering instead of actually increasing the hand size. There really isn't much to say about Strong Draw, especially since it's such a simple card, and I've already talked about it in my previous videos, as well as being hyped by the others in the community as well. Currently, the card is still pretty much only being used in the blue deck, since the ideal filter isn't the best fit for the other colors. But nonetheless, the idea of only paying 1 cost to go through 3 cards in the deck is nasty, considering that's pretty much skipping another 3 turns of going through the cards without effects, and it works very well with the Mandala deck, which can pretty much end the game with just Mandala himself, not requiring any other cards from hand. Not to mention, since blue can also place necessities from the trash, depending on what you're discarding, you're not exactly losing any cards as well. I can also argue that purple-blue deck is possible, especially since unlike most of purple self-mirror effects, Strong Draw allows you to choose what to discard from your hand. As for the flash effect, to be fair, I don't expect a lot of people to use it, but I think it's still good to point out that it's currently the only flash effect that only costs 1 core to plus 3000 VP. The rest either have to require soul core or have to be minimum 2 costs to get to the number 3. To be fair, it's just like most other cards in the list, what I see in Strong Draw is more of its future potential than what it can actually do now. The card will most likely remain to be the best filter for blue after all, and God knows when's the next time they will print it, so even if it's just an uncommon, do try saving a playset for yourself. Eventually this card will go into all kinds of decks as long as they can provide blue symbols for reductions. Not to mention, eventually there will be cards which can activate effects when you discard them from hand, and Strong Draw will be one of the cards which can trigger them easily. Hurricane Highlands is probably the best core boost engine we can get from Saga at the moment, since even Norman Guard requires the opponent to remove it first. Not to mention we also have a lot of good Gale cards, such as the Tokiwa from Law set, and from set 3 we also have Feng Huang with Gale 3. A single Hurricane Highlands can greatly reduce the cost of summoning these Gale spirits, and especially with Tokiwa, it means that you can pretty much generate 2 cores every turn. Not to mention, the effect can stack as well, so you have all 4 copies of Highlands on the field, you'll be generating 4 times the amount of cores. And it also means that having multiple copies of it in your hand doesn't necessarily mean they break your hand, which has been the case for a lot of the current necessities in the game, where you usually only need 1 copy on the field. Another idea with Highlands is to create a half green deck, where the green cards are mainly just Highlands and the Gale Spirits to create a core boost engine. The good thing with Highlands is that it can still generate cores for you without any summon effects, and you don't have to attack to gain the cores either. I think it can be a consideration for decks which don't want to attack a lot. For example, white decks with Fanatic Elk as the win condition. With this tactic, Highlands level 2 effect may also come in handy, as it also means that the opponent can't just spam attacks while you have Gale Spirits standing. On the other hand, the Gale and Highlands engine can also be used for a mid-range tactic, using the Gale Spirits for early pressure while ramping towards a heavy end. After talking about Highlands, of course I have to talk about the spirit that's the best match with it. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say Feng Huang is probably one of the most anticipated spirits from set 3 by the community. Finally, the green color is given a finisher that is on par with the current power level of the game. Not to mention, it's also finally a good foiler to justify using Authority. Purple-green may actually be a decent combination with the Gale engine I mentioned just now. You have Highlands to give core boost, then you have Rotting Swarm to give the draws while you're aggroing with the Gale Spirit, and then at the top end it can just be Authority pulling out Feng Huang from the trash. But besides all that, let's analyze what's good about Feng Huang itself first. It's currently the best Gale Spirit with Gale 3, meaning when it attacks and the opponent blocks, they have to exhaust another 3 spirits, so that's 1 spirit trading for 4. But what's even better is that Feng Huang can try and trigger even more effects when it hits the life, including refreshing itself, as well as stealing 1 more life. That means if you can maneuver well, each of Feng Huang's attacks is always going to be a disadvantageous situation for the opponent. Not to mention at level 3, it's currently one of the highest BP spirits in the game, meaning in most cases you won't lose to BP comparison. You might then ask, but say your Feng Huang is blocked and you have no other spirits to attack, wouldn't that be pretty meaningless anyway? You're not wrong, but that's where the other green cards come in to assist, and I'm mainly talking about Plant Trap, which, even better than Regain, allows you to refresh the battling spirit, in this case Feng Huang. I think with how the current game develops, you don't get a lot of situations where the opponents will have more than 4 spirits standing, ready to block, and even if they do have more than 4, then you always have other green effects to exhaust them, etc. So when they block, simply use Plant Trap to refresh Feng Huang. Afterwards, with Gale, Feng Huang will exhaust 3 spirits, removing all blockers and attacking straight for life next, then repeat as it can refresh by itself. On the other hand, if the opponent doesn't want you to repeat your attacks, they are also forced to self-destroy their own spirits in some cases. I'm really looking forward to facing the Gale decks and to see how well it can do in the later games. How wonderful, there's actually at least 1 yellow card which is worth talking about. Usually the yellow cards are just so underwhelming that there isn't much to discuss about them. But this time, Judgment Angel Flagellum might actually see some use, especially with her luster and the level 2 effect of applying an additional minus 2000 BP to every opposing spirit after you use a cost 5 or more magic. To be fair, it's pretty obvious that she was designed to deal with X-Biter, as combining with Exhaustlessness does exactly a total of minus 5000 BP, which is the max BP X-Biter has without any BP boost. But either way, Flagellum just in general serves as a very good board wipe option. Even if you're not using Exhaustlessness but other cost 5 or more magic, minus 2000 is enough to deal with opposing token decks and at least half the field on opposing spam decks. And as mentioned, combining with Exhaustlessness is minus 5000 in total onto the whole field, a number which even most of the big spirits are under. And then since Flagellum has luster, it's a repeatable combo throughout the game. And as long Flagellum survives, of course, but also with her being a 6000 BP at level 2, unless the opponent has saved their volcanic break for her specifically, there are no red magic cards that can deal with her. And then even for yellow, they will have to use at least 2 angelic pressure to get rid of her, which gives Flagellum players a flash timing in between to, for example, add BP to protect Flagellum. Blue currently literally has no flash effects to deal with her, and green source effects are pointless if the aim is to avoid her from triggering luster. My point was simply that Flagellum proves to be an oppressive controller under a lot of cases, which honestly has done enough for being just a rare card. Of course, the main problem with Flagellum is the core requirement, being a minimum 4 cost with 3 cores to get the full effects out, not to mention also having to pay the cost for the magic card if Michaela isn't around, which, to be fair, probably is cheaper to set up the symbols to use Exhaustlessness for only 2 costs than maintaining 4 costs on Michaela. But then, I suppose there's also the argument that Blessed Cathedral exists, so it's actually possible to ramp a bit more costs in yellow, or yellow-white is always an option with Normanguard. Obviously, Flagellum also has other weaknesses, mainly being against purple and white magic. Arguably, you can say that white is simply delaying for 1 turn, since they can bounce it to hand, and there's also the Spiral Tower to recycle Flagellum if she ever gets destroyed. Plus, even if the opponent is dedicated to make you waste an Exhaustlessness first, before they remove your Flagellum, there's still a board wipe done already. Another weakness for Flagellum is the spirits that are actually ridiculously high BP, such as Enterprise. Even after minus 5000, Enterprise will still have 7000 left at level 3, meaning if Flagellum isn't at level 3, she could just get blocked out. And even if she's at level 3, suppression will always be a thing. And then there's the obvious thing that right now, the best yellow magic that's cost 5 or more for Flagellum is Exhaustlessness, as the other ones that fit the category either don't help her at all or are useless in flash timing. So hopefully there will be more yellow magic in the future that will make Flagellum more useful. The next on the list is yet another yellow card, 10 Millennia Turtle Genbu. Just like Feng Huang, its existence serves to be an additional win condition to its color, and is for sure going to be an impactful one. I think everyone can agree that partly why yellow as a color has been struggling so much is due to its lack of a definite finisher. Right now we have Arcana Joker as a one-time finisher, but he's still not reliable due to his ridiculously low BP and having to trigger a summon effect. And before him, players have tried all kinds of roundabout ways to end the game with the yellow color. Some propose Alice control, using Alice to attack bit by bit while controlling the opposing board. Some decided to make multiple attacks with War Angel Shin while gaining values from using magic cards. And some decided to go fully unblockable with Phantom Beast King Lin, or a combination of level 3 Joe Eagle and Somersault. However, as you would have expected, all of these win conditions either inherit very high risk, or require too many card pieces to even deal a single damage, and then just simply get stopped by an absolute ice shield. Genbu, on the other hand, is a relatively stable spirit. It doesn't have any summon effects, and it has a relatively high BP with a reasonable summon cost and level cost that maintainable in yellow. However, its main positive is the ability of applying an unblockable effect to one of your fabled beasts every turn. Saga has already reached an age where vanilla spirits aren't a common sight, and token spirits being only at level 1 can be easily skipped over by Joe Eagle. So Genbu is pretty much providing an unconditional unblockable effect. It serves as the perfect top end for the Fabled Beast family, and is compatible with both the cost 2 rush of the archetype and the blast archetype. In cost 2 Rush, Genbu can give the unblockable effect to God Beast Behemoth, and subsequently when Behemoth attacks without any risk of getting destroyed by BP comparison, it applies another conditional unblockable effect to the other cost 2 spirits. And even if the opponent does have level 1 spirits to block the cost 2 spirits, the cost 2 spirits will usually be so small that they get destroyed, hence triggering Genbu's level 2 effect to refresh another one of your spirits, effectively nullifying the whole battle. In this particular scenario, that means refreshing Behemoth and going for another unblockable attack. There's even less that needs to be explained for Genbu's compatibility with the Blessed archetype. While Genbu is standing at 6000 BP or even 10,000 BP, the player is still able to attack with a Blessed Spirit without being stopped, gaining at least 1 life every turn, helping to prolong the game a lot longer by putting the opponent at a countdown while you're still maintaining your defense. Now we're getting into the territory of potential new staples. With the blue color joining the game, the Seabat Lighthouse has been a card which I am looking forward to, and probably going to be an annoying one as well, because it simply renders most tags in the game useless. Obviously, burst is still a thing, so there are still ways to bypass it, but most players will be setting down Absolute Ice Shield as burst, and the most effective flash effects, such as Corvette, From Prison, and also the upcoming Floodstream, are all purely effects from hand, meaning it forces the opponent to use Absolute Ice Shield as the main defense option. If the other cards in their hand are all off color, obviously. It's one of those cards which don't sound like the biggest deal, but once it's on the field, it may still become a major hindrance, and it might actually force the players to build their decks differently. Obviously, Nest Destruction still exists, so if the player manages to destroy Lighthouse, then it's all good. But as we all know, the problem with non-red decks is that such effects are pretty high cost for what they do, often costing the whole turn just to get rid of a Nessus. Plus, with blue coming in, there's also more Nessus protection, mainly coming from Iron Golem, which can protect it from all magic effects. It means that the opponent is forced to run spirits to destroy Nessuses, or using an additional effect to remove Iron Golem first, before removing Lighthouse. Either way, the existence of Lighthouse causes the opponent to either be unable to use their cards at all, or force them to spend more just to deal with it. And when you're thinking about it, it's doing quite a lot of things for a Nessus that only needs a minimum 1 cost to place down. If Lighthouse truly becomes a major impact to the meta, it will mean that the decks will be pushed to become even purer, in that maybe more decks will rely on magic cards of their own color, or on the other way around, it might push the decks to become even more multicolored in order to use all the magic cards they want. Or the third way, it leads to the meta where burst becomes the main defense of the game. And talking about burst, I think the Seabat Lighthouse may be a good combo with Lord Dragon from the lore set. Facing a non-white deck, the opponent will be forced to set down Absolute Ice Shield as defense, but then you will have Lord Dragon taking the life and dealing an extra life burn when they trigger Absolute Ice Shield. Sure, the opponent manages to end the turn, but because they can't gain their life back, you're still pushing to the end game a lot quicker than a normal game, which allows the player to heal. I'm seriously looking forward to the changes which the Seabat Lighthouse brings. Another red card on the list this time is the magic card Ritual Fire. I'm sure that when you look at the card, you will also understand why it's part of the top 10 list, and I even went as far as putting it in the second place. We all understand how much of an impact Burning Force can make at the early stage of this game. In general, 1 card trading for 2 can alter the pace of the game greatly. Obviously, there are a few differences between Ritual Fire and Burning Force. Burning Force's destruction effect is a main slash flash effect that destroys 2 3000 BP or less spirits, while Ritual Fire is solely a main effect but can destroy 2 4000 BP or less spirits. In this age where Saga still has an experience of BP inflation, being able to destroy anything at 4000 BP is a major thing. Your red opponents will be forced to raise the BP of the spirits even higher. Purple opponents wouldn't be able to just cheat draws with Dragonaga Assassin or make more guarantee attacks with Beltagor. The automatic gunners and curiosities in white aggro decks are even more vulnerable. Welcome Ant-Mans are struggling even more to stick around now, and Yaiba no Kami is rendered even more useless. Even though the destruction effect for Ritual Fire is limited to main step, the card can still be a defensive option, as the effect can be triggered via burst, since the card can activate itself when your life is reduced. The burst effect isn't something exciting to talk about, but I suppose giving a 2000 BP boost to more than 1 spirit can be handy at times. Either way, being a burst adds in more tension for the game, as besides Absolute Ice Shield, Star Blast Draw, and the occasional Dream Bomb and End Strike back, it gives the players another potential to doubt, causing games to be played even more carefully, especially during the early game when you don't want to lose your ball at all. Besides all that, it also serves as a good addition for Rex control tactics, especially since Volcanic Break is limited right now. It means that now we're no longer forced to use the only Volcanic Break on the Hippocampo and can instead save it for Dual Ego. One last thing to note that Ritual Fire is worded as destroying up to 2 opposing spirits, meaning you can choose to only destroy one spirit if you fear that the other one can lead to triggering other effects. Or I suppose in some very niche cases you just want to spend your cost without touching the opposing board by selecting 0 spirits. Ritual Fire is sure to become another stable option for all decks in the game. And then the last card on the list is none other than the icon of the set, Truth God Mandala. I think everyone can agree that unlike both the previous icons, namely Seagram Nova and Tokiwa, Mandala proves to be a card that's actually worthy of its position as the Saga rare. Whether it's better than Nirvana or not is another topic, but since this video is solely on set 3 cards, let's ignore that for now. Again, there isn't much to explain here because of how simple Mandala's effects are. Anyone who sees the on summon mill 12 will understand that it's a very impactful effect. Even though the deck size is minimum 50, being able to get rid of 12 cards with almost no ways for the opponent to retrieve them is a huge deal, and especially destructive in the current environment where there's absolutely no way to stop that mill 12 unless you're constantly destroying their nexuses. Also, don't forget that he can still mill 6 on attack, so in a crush focus deck, Mandala can mill a total of 18 in one turn if it's not getting removed by an unsummon burst. However, what I think matters the most is the versatility of this card. Especially in this meta where pretty much every deck relies on nexuses, Mandala can act as a one-off win condition in most decks, and in general act as the main win condition for decks which are still lacking a definite direction, such as a Luster deck. Another potential combo I can think of is using Mandala with Impaler Forest, so that you're almost guaranteed to be able to use his summon effect every turn. Though what's even more important in my opinion is that Mandala can become the key for white decks in general, as he can help get the deck out of many timeout situations. In general, since the blue color is a control color as a whole, it can also naturally cooperate with the white color, creating a blue-white mix with Mandala as one of the main win conditions. If Mandala ever becomes the top meta deck, or as just like the top meta card in general, then it also means that every player are forced to run 4 Burning Force again, or well, Nexus Destruction in general, in order to avoid the mill 12 from Mandala. And here is my top 10 list of cards which I'm looking forward to use in the set 3 Battle Spirit Saga. As you would have noticed, I didn't mention any purple or white cards, but it's not because the colors are underwhelming. It's just because I think the 10 cards I mentioned are more important than what purple and white can provide in set 3. I did think about maybe, for example, mentioning Gather Information or Dimensional Rift in the list, but eventually I think they're not impactful enough to be mentioned for what I expect to come next. This is the end of the seminar. Thank you for listening to the end. If you think I missed out anything or there's anything else that's worth mentioning, please do comment down below, and obviously as usual, if you like any of my stuff, do consider to subscribe for more videos in the future. I'm Ayumu, your seminar leader, and this is the end of the seminar. I'll see you next time.